The American dream promises a lot of things: freedom, security, happiness. But what happens when the American dream fails? How does one maintain justice in a corrupt society when the odds are stacked against them? On today's episode of the Live a Meaningful Story podcast, we analyze one of cinema's finest achievements, The Godfather. Directed by Francis Ford Coppola and released in 1972, The Godfather tops many people's lists for the greatest film of all time. But why has it garnered such praise? Though most of us aren't involved in the world of organized crime, perhaps there is something we see of ourselves in the Corleone family that we are drawn to, and how Coppola redefining justice in this corrupt society ends up developing our sympathies towards ruthless crime lords like Don Corleone. Helping us unlock this film is professional television screenwriter Kyle Arrington. And with his expertise, we'll explore this family drama set within the crime genre and what it has to say about the nature of the American way, family, and how power can corrupt us all. This episode was previously released under the All Things Narrative podcast, and so this was recorded back in 2023, but I will be sharing at the end of the conversation some additional insights that I've made since we recorded this episode a year ago. All right, here we go. Welcome to the Live a Meaningful Story podcast, where we analyze stories and films that help us make sense of life. We are four friends with backgrounds in storytelling, filmmaking, teaching, and narrative therapy. Join us on our quest towards telling and living our stories more meaningfully. I'm Derek Hatch.
My name is Nick Natal.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joseph Wilson.
I'm Jason Lin.
I'm going to start off by reading the letterbox description, and then we'll get right into this. Offer you can't refuse. Spanning the years 1945 to 1955, a chronicle of the fictional Italian-American Corleone crime family. When organized crime family patriarch Vito Corleone barely survives an attempt on his life, his youngest son Michael steps in to take care of the would-be killers, launching a campaign of bloody revenge. We have another special guest joining us.
I'm Kyle, Justice for Luca Brasi Arrington.
Yes.
Whoa, that was a clean name. I didn't feel that, but I like that.
So Kyle appeared way back on one of the first episodes of the All Things Narrative podcast, I think the fifth one,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked about your journey in becoming a screenwriter, right? We talked about your career. You've gotten to write for television shows. You have really, really wonderful indie film that now I've had the pleasure of seeing. And I can say that Dead Dad is easily one of my favorite films, especially with a comedy, in terms of how you handle grief.
Thanks, man.
I really, really think that was something special. So The Godfather really, even though it's a fictional story, it kind of has a very unique perspective on American history. I've heard a lot of people say that The Godfather is the quintessential American film, and we'll kind of dive into why people say that.
All right, I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Where is the law in The Godfather? Where is the established law in The Godfather?
That's interesting, right? Where is it?
I was even thinking, who are the characters we're even rooting for?
That was the next question.
Yeah.
Who are we rooting for,
Yeah.
and where is the law being established?
So a lot of crime stories, we are finding ourselves on the side of those who are committing crime, right? But the reason why, like with The Godfather, we identify with them is within all crime stories, whatever the protagonist is, there's some sort of moral code that they have, even if it's a criminal thing. So for example, you've got Don Corleone, who won't get in the drug business. It's too messy. And even, it's interesting because even in the Five Families, there's like this little code of like, well, I don't want drugs like next to kids, or right, I don't want it here. So
Just next to the dark people.
Yeah, so even like all those who are involved with crime have some sort of moral code, right? But of course, what we see is that not only the fear, the way that this family is feared, but we also begin to understand them, right? As a family, as a unit. And then when we start to see this kind of war between the families that's emerging because Don Corleone, he says no to that. And so then all the drama that starts to ensue after that, because I really think the person that we're really most supposed to connect with in The Godfather is Michael, right?
I'm not sure.
In terms of how the film is introduced.
Michael's the younger brother, right?
Yeah, he's the one that eventually takes over.
Okay.
It's very interesting how he's introduced. He's introduced in a military jacket. He's introduced with a girl who's not a part of the family, and you see all the family businesses going around, which we know is shady and not good, but we have someone who's a part of that family who's kind of like, he has that line where he says like, that's not me, that's my family. And so there's this sense of a goodness that we identify within Michael in the beginning. And we have even this weird thing of like, well, why doesn't he interact with his family? And then you have the family picture, and does she go in the picture? Does she get taken in it, right? And there's things with color symbolism and all that's going on there as well. But then, of course, they keep talking about him being like this hero, like, oh, he's like a war hero and stuff like that. If you've seen The Godfather, if you haven't, this is spoilers, but if you've seen The Godfather, you know that there's a tragedy that Michael Corleone faces in his life. The whole Godfather story is a tragedy of how a good man loses his soul. And it's interesting because one of the only points where you see someone who's supposed to uphold the law and order is that police captain, right? And of course, that's where his father's in the hospital and he's afraid that someone's going to come finish him off. And there's this altercation that he gets in with a police captain. And the police captain, of course, we realize is corrupted, right? So the only sense of order that you see in the entire movie is corrupt. So you're already in like this weird morally gray field with everything. And then you have this moment where the police captain punches Michael and hits him. And in that moment, Michael, who kind of like, again, if this is an American story, he's a vet. He's somebody who's gone and tried to give his life for this country. He has a sense of, respect for authority. But now he's literally seen the corruption, right? He's seen that even those who are in charge can't be trusted. And that's when he decides to become an authority unto himself. And that's where his journey, that kind of descent really starts to kick in for him, where he starts to transition more and more into the Michael he is by the end of the film.
So, Nick, why did you say no?
No to what?
You said, I don't think that he was. With Michael, that he is a protagonist.
That's because John David Washington is the protagonist in Tenet.
But had to get one in, take a shot.
No, I'm still thinking about how this movie is playing out. And if Michael is the main perspective we're following, then I think the law is established by Don Corleone.
Yeah.
And so Michael is now struggling to fit into that law under his father. And his father seems to establish the law throughout all of society.
Right.
So I wouldn't say the police is the form of order that the movie is showing. I think Don Corleone is the order. Of
that's
this
fair.
entire
That's
universe.
Fair. Absolutely.
Because the whole universe is corrupt, and so he is now the central anchor to it all. And Michael is like doesn't know where he stands in all this, and he's not wanting to stand in it. So then I guess the next question is, what is the law under Don Corleone according to him? How has he established the law in this movie? And I think the first scene is the best scene in the movie, the first like 20 minutes. And the first interaction with the guy coming for justice for his wife or daughter is maybe the most important scene in the whole movie.
Where he says we're not just killers.
Well, he says something else. He says, you come to me for justice, but not my friendship. And so apparently friendship and justice in that scene is linked together. In his view. And at first I thought he's just using him. Like,
I'm going to use you for something later because I'm going to give you this.
Exactly. So Don Corleone is in control. His idea of justice is just control. It's self-preservation. I need to protect myself in this corrupt world. And I'm going to call that justice. And then I won't get vengeance later because I don't know. It's just things are getting out of control. But no, there seems to be a link between those issues. You must call me friend first before we can interact. And I thought that was cool.
Well, and I think one of the essential like themes that's really established in that first scene, and it didn't I didn't catch it on the first couple watches, but as I've thought about it and kind of read some stuff, it's kind of become more clear. This is a story where the American way fails, right? That's kind of why this is, a lot of people talking about this as an American film.
Is the American way Michael's way?
Well, I would say it is in a sense, but even in the opening scene you described, where you have the guy that comes to him, I came to this country and this is what my life is like, right? But then I get here and guess what happens? This terrible thing to my daughter.
Yeah.
And guess what? America didn't come through for me. And so now I'm turning to you. I'm turning to the mob, the mafia, right? And it's very much that the American way, when it fails, it puts you in this place of desperation.
It also
where
kind
do
of
you where
seems
do you
like a
turn?
sense of entitlement. You come here and you think things are supposed to be given to you. Think these things. And then when something isn't given to you, you complain and then you go to something that is worse and that you probably shouldn't be going to.
And you still think that things are supposed to go the way.
It's just interesting. I think this is so morally like gray because the American way to me in this movie is Don Corleone and the family.
Yeah, and
I think absolutely.
It's because you're Italian.
We don't speak Nick.
I think that's the irony, though.
Going
right?
back to my roots.
Is I do think the film is contrasting these two different ways, but you're right. I do think that that's where the lines blur, and that's why I think everything that Michael becomes is perfectly rationalized in his mind. Right? He finds a way to fit it all in with his perspective and his worldview. You know, because Michael is a very loyal person. Yeah. He's very loyal, but that loyalty becomes channeled more and more into a central focus of his own family to the point where, just like his father, he's willing to do anything to preserve and protect that.
That definitely seems like the American way.
Preserve
what you have.
That first scene it establishes everything. It establishes a code of ethics. And I think that when you have a scene that establishes a good versus bad, even in this world, you're establishing a better bad.
Right.
So Don Corleone and the Corleone family represent the best version of bad.
Yeah.
They aren't good, right? But the thing that we and anyone watching the movie can understand is that he needs kindness, he needs respect, but he will always be generous, thoughtful, and loving.
Right.
These are all things that anyone can understand. So he's not saying to the guy that comes to him, if you don't call me friend, I'm going to kill you. He literally allows him multiple opportunities to call him friend. And when he does, he immediately offers him a hug.
Right.
He does. It's not, took you long enough. It's, you're my friend. And I can't turn this down on the day of my daughter's wedding because I have a code of ethics. I believe in this code of ethics. So you can understand how within this world, somebody like Michael Corleone ends up being actually good with this structure.
Right.
Because you also learn partway through the movie that what Don wanted is for Michael to not be a part of it.
Yes, that's right.
He is fulfilling what his father wanted of him.
Yeah.
And what we see throughout the movie is the code of ethics that are established not work. They systematically get chipped away as the movie goes on.
Yeah.
Michael holds on to him as hard as he can, but the things that he cannot give up is the protection and love of family.
Yeah.
And through protecting and loving his family, he loses his soul, which is a conundrum that is easy to understand because you understand why he does what he does, because who would not protect his unprotected father in a hospital when somebody's trying to kill him?
Yeah.
And then from there, want justice on the people who are trying to kill your father.
Right.
To go so far as to be the only person that could actually kill these two people in this deli.
Yeah.
Right.
And then escape and try to escape it. But then have the hammer brought down on you. And what do you do when your brother and your wife are murdered? You return for justice.
Yeah.
How do you hold on to those values when these things continue to happen to you?
It's almost as if in that opening scene, Kyle, and I know this is a screenwriter tactic, it foreshadows the entire movie. Because you have a guy who has this kind of tradition, we'll call it the traditional American way, right? And he comes and he says, this doesn't work. This is the only thing I see possibly working. And that's the mafia way, right? That's Michael's whole journey in the film, is like Michael realizing, like, as you said, everything's chipped away bit by bit to where Michael realizes this is the only way that actually gets things done. because we made this joke when we were watching the movie. Like, when we were watching the beginning of the movie, like, Michael's in a whole different movie.
Yeah.
Like, literally, the scenes with him and Kay, right? Where they're like, it's Christmas time. And they're going out on dates.
It's Barbie versus Oppenheimer.
Yeah. They're in a whole different movie. And you feel that, right? And it's not till his father gets shot that Michael starts to become a part of the movie we're actually paying attention to, right? And it's interesting because even like the color schemes, like especially with Kay, but even a little bit with Michael, in the beginning of the movie, their colors are so vibrant and distinct from everybody else. Like if you go and watch and you pay attention, right? But Michael's colors become more and more dulled and muted in every suit that he's wearing, right?
Even with Michael's like physical transformation, when he got punched in the face, starts morphing. It looks like he's talking like his dad and looking like his dad.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So when I'm listening to Kyle, you were talking about Michael wanting justice after the tragedies that he experienced, but that's more in line with revenge. And I don't think Don Corleone looked at justice that way, because he wouldn't kill the people that beat that guy's wife or daughter in the beginning.
Yeah.
So Michael and Don Corleone's ideologies are different.
Even Don Corleone like did a truth at the end, like, let's just drop.
Well, because there's one thing Michael has that's different than the rest of his family. Is that what you're going to say? Is that he was in the military. He's got a whole different perspective that no one else in his family, like, he's literally been in a war, and not just any war, World War II, right? He has been in a war. And so that's why, like, unlike Sonny, his brother, who's very like brash, harsh, reactionary, right? Michael's very cold and calculated, and he can kind of see like and make decisions. Well, this is war. I know what war is. I know what has to be done. Was that what you were going to?
I was going to say, because I think Nick is spot on, because I agree that Michael is inadvertently going on this revenge journey. I think that for him, it's protection for his father, who was wronged, but what the guise that it comes in is revenge. And the reason you know that's not what Don Corleone wants is because when Don Corleone finds out that it's Michael who's the one who killed them, he cries.
Yeah.
That's how you know that's not what Don Corleone wanted for him. So he doesn't want him to go down this path. But when he chooses this path, he welcomes him into the fold.
Yeah.
So, but I agree with Nick. It's like, it's he thinks it's justice, but it's not justice.
Absolutely. He's got it twisted.
And then I was even thinking of a question Nick asked a long time ago when we were at work. What is fair? So in this, what is justice? Or what is even the right term of, like, what is justice?
Well, if the guy in the beginning of the film, right? If the guy in the beginning is going to Don Corleone, he's seeking justice. Is he seeking justice, or is he kind of seeking vengeance, kind of like what Michael will eventually do, right?
Everything is redefined.
Yes.
America is redefined. Justice is redefined. Family is redefined. Protection is redefined. And it's also interesting that, to the point you brought up, when he says, I'm not going to do drugs, we applaud him, even though he has murdered multiple people.
Yes.
Because we're redefining what is good.
Yes.
Not giving drugs to kids.
Well, the reason why he's not doing that is because it's uncontrollable and he knows it. He doesn't want to. It's literally, it's like invading on his control of life. And he's like, no, I don't want any part of this. You guys are not seeing this clearly.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's still business instead of anything of...
What is Don Corleone's, like, main purpose? Like, so Michael is vengeance. It's very clear that Michael is, like, cold-hearted, like, dominate New York, kill all the heads of the family at the end. But Don Corleone was never that. He was much more compassionate.
So is he like the father? Well, I know he is the father, but it's still
he's like order. I feel like Corleone is just like the representation of order in a corrupt world, even though he is corrupt.
Chaotic order.
Yeah. Like, this order doesn't work. I'm gonna make my own. That's gonna be what I feel is the best.
He stayed in his own square.
By showing Don Corleone, even though like people die under him and like the horse scene is a great introduction to how threatening and menacing he could be, right? By giving him some morals, it makes Michael's fall all the more tragic, because Michael looks way worse by the end of the film than his father ever did, right? Again, you're redrawing the lines. I mean, Michael's fall has to be like one of the hardest falls I've ever seen in a film.
Also one of the most understandable, which is why the movie functions so well.
Right. Well, how crazy it is that in that whole middle segment of the movie, when he goes off to Italy and he kind of tries to start a new life, but you kind of see that he's still got a little bit of that Godfather emerging in him, right? Because he sees this girl he thinks is pretty, goes to her. Yeah, I love that reveal that it's her father, right? Yeah. Imagine like, some guys like talking about your daughter right in front of you, right? Yeah, but yeah, and he's just like, I have a lot of people that would pay for that information, pay good money, and then he's kind of like, would you rather have your daughter lose a father or gain a son? I was just like, dang. So he's already got that in him, right? So he can't get away from it, even though there's a sense that maybe he's trying to just, get married and kind of have a really casual life out in the country. But it's ironic because he's like getting connected with his roots, like his Italian roots.
He went up and he was like, I like you and I want you.
That's right.
The easy
That's
way,
right.
The hard way.
But he doesn't realize he's actually getting in touch with his family roots, which I'm assuming that's what the second movie dives into more, is kind of how that plays out. But I think that's so interesting that he can't run away from it. And then that moment when he's betrayed, the car blows up, you're watching the last chance he has at any sort of decent, normal life blow up. There's no turning back.
But you say his family roots, but kind of like what Nick was saying, like that really wasn't his dad's style. So it's kind of an even twisted version of what his
absolutely.
Roots are.
Absolutely. If you're enjoying this conversation and you have a passion for storytelling, and maybe you want to get better at telling your story through speaking or through writing, then I encourage you to check out our website, allthingsnarrative.com. When you get there, you'll see on our homepage that you can get an exclusive bonus episode of this podcast called 5 Tips to Improve Your Storytelling. All you have to do is sign up for our email list at our homepage, and you'll get that episode along with additional notifications about this podcast, about our workshops, coaching, classes, events, different things that we do to try to serve you in your story. So check out that link in the description. And now back to the conversation.
My favorite part of the whole movie is in the beginning, where they're taking the family picture at the wedding, and Don Corleone notices that Michael's not in the picture, and he just walks off. Yeah. And he doesn't say anything to anybody, and no one asks, like, what's going on? He just goes, we're not taking this without Michael, and he goes and does something else. I just thought that was, like, I don't know if touching is the right word, but that was cool.
Yeah.
That was really cool. Like, he loved Michael so much.
Yeah.
And he was so disappointed. The next favorite part is when he finds out that Michael killed the cop.
Yeah.
It's just like, he has a code of morality in him. And I feel like we're rooting for, at least I feel like we're rooting for him the whole time in the movie.
Because when he got shot, I even was like,
yeah, no, I was like, no.
So why are we like that towards him? Like, he's even, I feel like, a protective figure to to us as we're watching. Like, he is the anchor to all of it. Like, it's almost like he's the God figure.
Because they don't show anyone with a higher sense of compassion than him. Like, and what you guys were saying, they set him as the law because they get, out of all the characters, they give us more of something we relate to than any of them.
Well, that's the big difference with the opening scene, right? Let's contrast this with the opening scene of Inglourious Bastards.
Okay, let's do it. Make that deal? Damn good deal.
Damn good deal.
I'll make you an offer you can't refuse.
Hey, Donnie.
Yeah.
All right. So in the opening of Inglourious Bastards, right, you've got Hans who's introduced. Now, here's the thing. Yeah. It's a conversation. You don't know how it's going to go. But the fact that Hans shows no mercy, we immediately in our minds go, yep, that's going to be our villain, and we're set. The opening scene with The Godfather has a figure that, with Don Corleone, if that opening scene was him just going like, you know what? Nope, because you didn't show me compassion. Bang.
Yeah.
I think we would view him very differently through the rest of the film. But because he's set up as this almost benevolent figure that can use power to, in a weird, twisted way, help people. And then this is repeated a little while later, when even all the stuff with the horse, right, that's going on, we know it's set up so well that he's just trying to help this guy land a part. So he's also helping somebody. And it didn't have to be. They emphasize that over and over again, right? It didn't have to be that way.
Even with the guy that was stuttering, speaking of favorite parts, that's the guy that had to rehearse his lines.
Yeah.
Apparently, like, he messed up before, and he was still able to come to the Godfather. He was like, I'm sorry about this. Like, it's all right, bro.
Yeah.
And you have a job now.
Yeah. That was the hitman.
Yeah, exactly.
There's something about the way he set up, though, to where you're okay. Like, you're with him on it.
He's the center of the universe.
Yeah.
And everyone at the wedding loves him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter how we feel about him in regards to our understanding of justice, we know that everyone at this party loves him.
Yeah.
Everyone wants his respect. And even the most terrifying person, Luca Brasi, this massive hitman, is stuttering before, which is, I love that is literally, they did that ipso facto. They were like, we got to write in the sequence of him rehearsing his speech because the actor kept screwing up.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
They filmed that scene first with him and Marlon Brando, and he was just like, and so they wrote in those scenes where he's sitting rehearsing his speech.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's really good.
How good is that, right? But the thing is that it functions beautifully for what we're saying. Francis Ford Coppola is smart enough to know this is only going to double down what I'm saying about this world.
Yeah.
Is that even the most terrifying figures look at him with love, respect, the admiration of politicians, of other figures that are fathers in their own crime families, plus celebrities. Everyone loves him. His family loves him. He loves his sons, loves his daughter. Love. It's literally a party filled with love. So we look at him, we're like, that's the center of our universe.
Yeah.
Well, and you could tell once Michael comes into power, people don't look at Michael the same way they look at him. They all like treat him or see him a little differently. Some see him like, oh, we could take this guy out. Others, like the casino guy, are just like, he's just going to cuss him out right then and there. He's like, where's the Don? So now it's interesting because there's another thing about his humanity that really comes out as well. So Don Corleone. So right before he's shot, we see him like going to a market.
To a neighborhood market.
To a neighborhood market just to get fruit, like an ordinary person, right?
Yeah.
And you see him just try to get some fruit and then bam, he's shot. So I think also like that circumstance, it's not like he was doing a deal. It's not like he was doing anything shady. He was just living the way we would, right? And then that random act of violence, or supposedly random act of violence, there's something that we go like, ooh, that's hard. He's, even when he tries to be normal, like he can't escape it, right?
Yeah.
And then if you look forward to his last moments in the film, which I thought it was really funny. I caught this the last time we watched it, was that he gets shot. Like right when he's picking up fruit, like he gets shot, he does the orange trick. And then that's when he collapses. I'm like, is this guy like,
Death
like
by citrus.
Yeah, exactly, right?
The bullets didn't kill him, the fruit did.
But I think one of my favorite moments with Don Corleone and his humanity is with Michael's son, with his grandchild in the garden. He he does the funny orange thing, and then he like tries to run with everything he has, like just to try to play like a little game. And there's that sense that even though he's the Godfather, he's really just their father. He's really their father, their grandfather.
Ooh.
Like, that's what's more important to him. He's become the Godfather, right? So that he can be, in his eyes, the best kind of father he can be.
This type of connection. Okay, let's think about this. So you just talked about the garden with the grandchild and then the Godfather. So after the Godfather dies, in a sense, violence and rage is put into the world. So God has died in this world,
right?
Because this world is fallen, and now the result of that is just violence, fear, and it's just reigning supreme.
That's good.
Lack of order.
Yeah, it's a lack of order.
Well, that's actually
okay.
The reason that functions so well is that Don Corleone is the literal only character that does not change.
Yeah, yeah.
Despite everything that happens to him, he's shot. He's in the hospital. He lives the same way he dies, loving family.
Yeah,
and nothing changes. That scene when he's talking to the other fathers of the crime families, the other heads of the families, he's coming in there and he's just like, "Look, you killed my son. I killed yours. You shot me.
Yeah,
I still love you." Like he has not changed his perspective on the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Once the unmovable thing is gone, there's no structure to the universe.
Yeah, that's it right there.
Yeah, that's we're sprinkling on that.
Another thing that I think helps pull us into seeing him as the guideline for justice is, well, empathy. We put that as the writers use empathy to make us say, okay, we're rooting for that guy now, and that's what you're saying. We find someone. Who are we rooting for? whose side are we on? Another thing that I thought was cool is that they showed him fatigued in the beginning. Like, it's his daughter's wedding, and after everyone, he's like, oh, yep, of course, thank you. And then he just looks away, and he's just exhausted. And people are just coming to him because they want something or they need something, and it's his daughter's getting married. So the empathy of seeing this man exhausted and maybe feel like he was used, we go, man, okay, I see myself. And it just further pulls that in. In fact, another thing I wanted to add that I was thinking of when we were talking about justice and his code of ethics, he even says that he's not going to murder the guy. He's like, that's be just. He literally says it wouldn't be justice. So justice is on his mind. And I just thought that was a cool tidbit to add. Really
it's also really cool in regards to that too, because there are two sacred events that are bookends to the movie. You have a wedding, and then you have the baptism of the Godfather.
Oh yeah, we need to talk about the baptism.
And the thing that's interesting is that Don Corleone, Vito Corleone, would not do anything to besmirch a sacred event. Right? Everything he does in that is loving, caring, supportive, thoughtful. I'm not going to have that BS here. You know, the guys come to take photos like, get out of here, get out of here. No. Nothing's going to ruin this day. What does Michael do as he becomes father?
Kills multiple.
Veins the baptism.
Yeah, bro.
Well, it's a baptism. It's a baptism in blood, right? I think that's the contrast you see there is like, because it's a double Godfather, right? Michael is becoming a literal godfather to this child, but he's also becoming the godfather of he's taking his father's role, but it's not going to be the same benevolent figure, right? This is a person who stands at the altar and says that he renounces the way of Satan while giving in to the ways of Satan. It's almost as if, because if we do see Don Corleone as kind of like this God figure, we see Michael Corleone as the opposite of that. This almost satanic figure that's come into power, and to the point where in
Lucifer,
absolutely Luciferian, right? And it's the moment where he gains everything. He gains the world, and he forfeits his soul in that very moment.
Literally seeing him like at the end of the movie, like with his wife, it was just kind of, it's just like, dude, like,
of course not.
Yeah, it's not how you used to be. Even in his like quick rage moment, it's like you weren't like that in the beginning, and literally just lying to her face.
Well, that's the thing I think is really cool, is the lying specifically, because I saw this really amazing breakdown. I wish I could shout out to the person who did this, but they say that Michael Corleone has 5 traits at the beginning of the movie that are all admirable. And
I think I've seen this breakdown.
And throughout the movie, each one of them is taken away.
Yes.
The last vestige that he holds on to is honesty until the moment he lies to his wife. And the moment he does, somebody walks up and says, Don Corleone. And then the door is shut.
Wow.
So it's crazy too, because after the baptism, he still does terrible acts of violence after that. And then he still lies to his wife. Which to me is the greatest fault of his.
Right.
Is that moment where he could have been honest. He could have said, because you also know that Vito Corleone did not lie to his wife.
She knew everything.
Well, and there's a savageness too to that, because there's also the fact that Michael technically didn't kill him, right? So just to give context here, we're talking about his sister, and we find out that his sister, that's the wedding in the beginning of the movie. But then, of course, we find out that the person that she's married, Carlo, right? He's an abusive jerk.
I wish they stomped him out.
Yeah,
Michael hated him too.
And Don Corleone looks like a saint in comparison, right? So the thing with Carlo was that's kind of the loose end, is like when Sonny is set up, because Sonny's the only one who knows what's going on. But then when Sonny's set up, Carlo sells him out, and so Sonny gets killed. And then it looks like he goes under the radar. I think one of you guys even brought that up when we were watching the film. Is like, wait a minute, like he's still a part of everything. And then, of course, you know that Michael knows. Michael has that conversation with him. It's very much like, I'm going to send you on a plane, get to Vegas, and leave all that. So technically, for those who were all witnesses there, Michael just was trying to help. He looked like he was a benevolent figure like his father, right? And to everyone's eyes, that's what they saw. But then, of course, Michael sits back and he has somebody else that does the dirty work.
Carmenza. Who left the family and now is back.
Yep. He comes and he does the deed, right? And so, of course, when Michael says, like, when he's confronted, did you kill him? Technically, no, he didn't. So that's why it's like a weird loophole, because there's a part of him that's trying to almost have this image like his father, but he's not.
Well, it's to the point that Nick brought up earlier too, where it's what he says there, they wouldn't be just, I'm not going to kill him because there wouldn't be justice. Yeah. What Michael says at the end, I'm going to send you on a plane. That's what Vito would have actually done.
Yes. Yes.
But that's what the difference is that he is not a man of his word like his father was.
One of the last lines Don Corleone says before he dies, when he's talking to Michael in the garden, is he says, I've spent my whole life trying to not be careless. And I think in Michael's mind, the way he interprets that as, well, I got to take out these 5 families then. I don't want to be careless, right? It's interesting because that's kind of his last words to his son. And you see that Michael does take that to heart, but in a completely different way than his father does.
And I'm thinking now, like, that's why they went 2 separate different ways, is what was the genesis for their sense of justice? And if Don Corleone's was love, or, hey, there needs to be a sense of order, Michael's, we see, was vengeance. And even though they sought justice, their idea of it changed based on where it came from.
Yeah.
And their motive.
Do they show that in the second one? They probably do.
A little bit. Well, the second one is a prequel, technically.
Yeah. Oh, really? See, because I was even thinking of the generational difference, because Michael was technically brought up, like, he literally went to war. He was brought up in that wartime. This is what the mob looks like. This is what, like, your life is. People just drop and die and end up disappearing in a nick of day. But with Don, I'm pretty sure he grew up with that. We have to trust each other to actually build up this organization and build up to where we are now. So yeah, it builds them.
Yeah,
your environment builds you.
Michael was trying to let that not come back out, and it came back out.
Yeah, that dog came back out.
Yeah. Got that dog in him.
Got that dog in him.
Oh, geez.
Well, any other thoughts on The Godfather?
I love the wedding scene. I love the fact that it was like 30 minutes. It was probably like half the movie, but it was the best part, bro. Yeah. I love it.
I was talking to Kyle at work. My last thought is that it's really not a crime movie. It's a family movie. It's a movie about family.
That's fair.
It's a Christmas movie.
We have to cut this part
Godfather
out.
is everything.
It's a family drama set in a crime like background.
That's fair.
Rather than a crime movie set within a family.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's just the best parts are seeing Brando with his sons and how different they are and how he treats them all differently. Brando is the best part of this movie.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. It's a stacked cast, right? It really, and it's
Sterling Hayden as McCluskey is like one of the OG, like, amazing character actors from decades before then. I mean, and just imagine Sterling Hayden in The Killing, Stanley Kubrick's second feature-length movie. I mean, like, unbelievable cast.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of those people, I think, were fairly newer, right?
Yeah,
like at that time, like
James
I know
Caan and Robert Duvall, I think, was their first leading roles. Robert Duvall's first movie was To Kill a Mockingbird,
right?
Boo Radley, like 5 years prior,
right? Fun fact about Robert Duvall, by the way, I met Robert Duvall at the Breakers.
Hey,
and because I don't work at the Breakers anymore, I could talk about it.
That's another aspect to the Don Corleone, because Robert Duvall in the movie is adopted into the family.
Yeah, that's right. There's a benevolence. Yeah, that he has there. Absolutely.
I have 2 small things, because that reminds me of the consigliere thing. Because that's the huge thing. Tom Hagen's character being tossed out as the consigliere, because he's not a wartime consigliere. That's the huge difference, too, is that the Vito would never not have Tom by his right side.
Right.
He believes it's a time of peace.
Yeah.
Well, they make that decision together at the end. They do. He backs up his son. And is he just backing up his son to back up his son? Or
I feel like it's more backing up his son to back up his son. I don't even feel like
it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Because he says, because remember, people come to Vito after that, and they're like, what are you going to do? And he's like, Michael's in charge now.
Yeah.
It feels like he's like, I'm passing the baton now.
Well, it's interesting, too, because Tom plays an interesting role in the family, right? Because he's kind of like this executioner of what Don Corleone wants. Because we don't really see Don Corleone like get his hands dirty. It's really Tom that goes out there, and Tom is also a lawyer, right? Which is interesting
he's
because
so official. That's what he feels like good.
Yeah. So that's what
nothing's personal, everything's business.
Yes,
which is fascinating. He's like, that's his problem with Sonny. Was like, this isn't personal, this is business. And he's like, you shot my dad. Of course it's personal.
So,
Everything's personal.
Well, I wonder if that conversation is something that Michael reflected on when he decided to let him go, right? Because I think for Michael, he does take it all personal.
Well, it's like that brings me to like one of my actual favorite moment in the whole movie is when he's sitting down with McCluskey and Salerzo. Sorry, the guys he kills in the restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
He comes back with the gun. Right before he goes, I forget who it was that says to him, I think it's Sonny. He says, you come out of that bathroom, you come out guns blazing. What does he do instead? He sits down.
He sits down.
He takes a second. That's the moment where Michael changes. And it's this long moment where it pauses as you see him from behind. He's shrouded in black. There's these two guys flanking him in the shot. They turn and look at him. And in that moment, you're imagining what Sonny wanted. Shoot him right now. What does he do instead? Sits down. And we are asking, what would we do? And that's the moment of the movie where you're like, what would I do? Is he going to do it? Is he going to shoot him? What's going to happen? And he takes it and you just watch his eyes go back and forth and then finally picks it up, bang, bang. From that moment on, Michael is a different person.
The trains in the background screeching and his whole psyche is just splitting it.
What is going through their mind in terms of justification? Thinking about the christening scene. And it's crazy that he actually murdered the father of the kid that he was godfather to.
Yes.
But what is he thinking about as he's like accepting that oath? It's like he's saying it, but he's actually knowing that he's crossing over and doing the works of the devil, or is he convinced in his mind that he's speaking truthfully?
I think that's there. And I think that's the deception that he's under there. To get like theological for a moment, if you talk about, I don't know where you stand theologically on this, but like my perspective is like with the devil doesn't actually do much as a figure. It's actually other people that are executing the devil's will on his behalf. And so that's kind of what Michael is doing, is he is having all these people go and take down the 5 families, right? He's having them do the dirty work. He's having them do it. So in his eyes, he's able to take that oath and kind of be like, yeah, I'm not doing it. But ironically, he is the works of Satan, right? He's not only participating in it, he's the spearhead, becoming the spearhead for it now.
Yeah, the sin is from being captive to the desires of his hearts, which are for, like, one is, rage and anger and vengeance, but like also the protection of his family in a perverted way of just the way he's doing it. But I've just wondered, like, how has he justified this in his mind? Is he lying, like, deliberately, and he knows that he's doing the works of the devil, or does he really think that he's clean hands on this? Like, he's doing what's right and what needed to be done.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was a cool thing to think about.
And you heard in this conversation how the lines of what is just and what is right and what is good are getting redrawn in light of the corruption of the society that these immigrants find themselves in. Don Corleone draws those lines for us. And we see at the heart of all of the crime and corruption going on around, there is a man who is trying to, at all costs, protect his family. And so we've shared a lot about why this is a great film, why this is one of the great films. But how does The Godfather help us to live a meaningful story? Like several stories that we've talked about on this podcast, The Godfather is a cautionary tale. It always strikes me that Michael doesn't want to be involved at first with the family business. He's trying to distance himself from that. He's trying to have a different narrative for his life. But the choices that his family has made, which get elaborated on in the second film, in particular, we kind of see Don Corleone's path, and that's going to be our next episode here. But how those choices set the stage for Michael's destiny. And it's an important reminder that what we do, what we create in our lives through our families, our legacies that we pass down. Don Corleone, Vito, he didn't want Michael to get involved in this, but there was no other path laid out for him. He even tried his best to have Michael go to Italy and live out a different kind of story. But what Don Corleone has created and involved himself in doesn't allow for that story to unfold, or at least for it to end only in tragedy. And so when we think about what it is we are building, what foundation are we building our lives on? And if we build the foundation of our lives on power through corruption, as we see the mafia doing in this film, then we will see that we're going to be caught in this web that we just can't break out of, because we're always going to be grasping for more power. And we're always going to be trying to maintain that power, because it's not just about us. Everyone in the family, even those who marry into the family, they all are caught in this web now. They all get involved. The story that you live out is not in a vacuum. It touches and reaches and impacts those around us, for better or for worse. When justice is left into our own hands to draw the lines and figure out what is good, right, and just, it's never going to work out perfectly. It's going to end with either ourselves dead or those that we care about in the grave. And so be wary and conscientious of the legacy that you leave behind. What are you cultivating for those who will come after you? And there is a sense of security that the Corleone family wants. Through their power, they're able to have it. They have protection. They have power. But they're also vulnerable because they're caught in this crime drama where at any time, if you say the wrong thing, if you do the wrong thing, if you irritate the wrong person, there are repercussions. So you always have to be on your guard. You can never be fully at peace. So always having to grasp more and more power in order to hang on to more and more security. And as we'll see in next week's episode, that corruption can taint your soul over time. And so join us next week as we dive into The Godfather Part 2. And until next time, take care. Thank you for listening to the Live a Meaningful Story podcast, produced by All Things Narrative. If you'd like to learn more about our coaching, workshops, events, please check out allthingsnarrative.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at All Things Narrative. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing and leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and tune in next time as we continue exploring the stories we love and the stories we live. Take care.